but we're going to do some meditation before we start. The study portion of our service. Today is going to be, our theme today is going to be all about peace, which might feel a little odd right now, and whatever you're thinking about what's going on in the big wide world, I suspect that it would be hard to agree that the world does not feel very peaceful right now. You might have different opinions about why that is or who to blame for it, but the world doesn't feel very peaceful right now. I want to give you just an image to think about as we go into the meditation, which is the word for peace in Hebrew, which I imagine many of you know is shalom. And it has the same root as the word in Hebrew shalem, which means whole or complete. And it's very interesting because there's this reference in the Torah to Jacob, that Jacob leaves his parents' house and he has all this fights with his father-in-law, and then he even fights to the death with this angel. And then he says that he came out of this fight whole, even though it actually tells us that he hurts his ankle. And so what I want us to think about is this idea of peace and wholeness, and how you find peace and wholeness even when it feels like that's impossible. Because I can't only speak for myself. I kind of feel like I need that right now. Feel free to disagree. But everyone take some deep breaths in and some deep breaths out. Find a position that's comfortable for you. I generally don't look up while I'm doing this because I want you not to feel like someone's really looking right at you. Just take your time. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. There is a story of a Jewish sage named Rabbi Avner, who was said to have told the story of an advanced student who wanted wisdom. When the student was interviewed for admission to the academy, he was asked a crucial question. Have you achieved hishtavut, which in Hebrew means equanimity? The student responded, what do you mean, master, by hishtavut? And the elder responded, when someone praises you, does it make you feel good? And when someone blames you, do you feel bad? The student thought a while and then said, when someone praises me, I do feel good for a few moments, and then I let it go. When someone blames me, I do feel bad, and then I let it go. But in either case, I do not treat one more favorably or hold a grudge against anyone. The old master said to him, my child, you are doing quite well, but you have not yet achieved true equanimity. You must leave now and return only when you are able to receive praise or blame without any reaction whatsoever. Think for a moment about how difficult that challenge is. Every day, we're bombarded with innumerable number of stimuli. And sometimes those things make us feel good, and sometimes they make us feel bad. And sometimes they make us angry, and sometimes they make us confused. When this sage says you should receive all of this stuff without any reaction, is he asking for something realistic? Is he asking for something that's fair? Think about something that's going on in your life, whether it's just you or your family or your job or something going on in the world that consistently provokes a strong reaction from you. And where that reaction is one that you see the downside of. Maybe you're someone who reacts too strongly to criticism, and you need do a little bit of a better job of not letting it stick to you. Or maybe you're someone who fishes for compliments, and you get too much validation outside of yourself. Or maybe you're someone who doom scrolls on social media, and your news feed is filled with stories about the events of the day that get you excited or get you angry. What would it look like to sense some equanimity in that moment? What would you gain from that approach? What would you lose from that approach? Sometimes too much empathy, too much emotional identification can be a dangerous thing. Not so much because that it's not good to recognize how others are feeling or how you're feeling. That's a good thing. But sometimes we can recognize other feelings so much that we're identifying with them to the point that we can no longer ourselves do anything about them. I think this is what Rabbi Avner's story is trying to teach us. How can you receive everything without going to an immediate reaction? How can you receive everything without losing your balance? We're now going to do a 15-minute sit. And some peaceful silence. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes. Don't get up too fast if you've been in really deep concentration. It's 10:30. Everyone just take like a 2-3 minute stretch and grab a siddur and a book. If you don't have one red book, one red book, one blue book in the back. And we will then continue. Jessica, you said you can't come to the line up here? The outdoor one or the indoor one? Oh, okay. Accidentally? Oh, that's okay. We'll let you do another ticket. Okay. You can't do it to the kids? No. Okay. No. Okay. Awesome. So that you came in here intentionally this time. The other time you came accidentally? Okay. Oh shoot, I went. Sorry, folks, I keep forgetting things today to bring them in. Like I said, so we're talking about peace today, which don't laugh, or cry, or whatever term, again, we're not here to talk about any particular current events, except to say that I think it's pretty safe to say that we're not living in a very peaceful world right now, and you can decide why that is, but it's a strange thing because it's something we're supposed to pray for every single day in Judaism. And so, there's a lot of things that in theory we can pray for every day where it makes sense to do it because the connection is doesn't seem so ridiculous. Meaning, if I pray every day for wisdom, about myself, I may not necessarily succeed in being wise every day, but I get that that's something that I can strive towards. If I pray by saying blessings over food that I eat, again, I'm eating the food, it's not, but peace is a weird thing to pray for because especially if you are constantly saying something and it feels like you're nowhere near to it actually happening. So that's what I kind of want us to look at the prayer that we say around peace in the Amidah on Shabbat. So turn to page 120. And And I'm not, full disclosure, I don't think that we're necessarily going to resolve this problem today. Maybe if Sam shows up, in the next few minutes, he'll help us resolve it. But I'm not betting the farm on it. But the top is this prayer, Sim Shalom, right? Which we don't really sing out loud that much, but you probably at some point in your life, if you were growing up in a synagogue, would sing it like in synagogue. And let's look at the words together here, right? So, grant universal peace with happiness and blessing, grace, love, mercy for us and for all the people of Israel. Bless us, our Creator, one and all, with your light, for you have given us by that light the guide to a life of caring, filled with generosity and contentment, kindness and well-being, and peace. May it please you to bless your people Israel in every season, at all times, with your gift of peace. Praise are you, Adonai, who blesses God's people Israel with peace. Okay. So I've done this a few times with everybody. So I'm going to ask you one of the standard questions I like that you can ask about any prayer to make it more meaningful than it was the day before, which is, tell me about a person who decided to write this prayer. Okay? This is not a prayer that is in the Torah. Okay? It was written by a human being at some point, so they must have had a reason for it. Look at the words and just speculate with me, what might be some reasons someone would write something like this? Yeah, Adam?
Well, it seems like it's a prayer born out of a sense of longing and need. So
tell me more. Say more about that.
So basically, they didn't have it. And they're like, it would be great if we had this peace. I want this peace. I'm going to pray for this peace. Let me write this down.
Got it. And by the way, I'm following up the questions not because I disagree with you, because I actually feel like I want to get more of how you're getting to it. So you said that it was like a longing for peace. Where do you see that in the words? What made you, read this and think that it's like a person longing for it?
Well, it's because you don't really, it's asking for it to be granted in not just one way, but a few different ways. And you don't ask for something like that if you've already got it. You ask for it if you need it. If you're full, you don't say, please give me some, let me find something to eat in the fridge. If you're starving, you go, please let there be a sandwich in the fridge.
Oh, I got it. So you're saying, so the length of it and the depth of the description would come from a place of a person not having it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. What else? Lou? Mm-hmm. I like it. Yeah, Brian?
Maybe perhaps based on the war, suffering, struggle of the Israelites over years of struggle and war, finally grant us peace.
Okay, so actually that's actually a perfect segue to
because what I'm curious about is what might be going on around this person as they're writing this. So your answer was, like maybe they're looking at it historically. They're saying like, I'm thinking about the Jewish people and everything that's gone on, and I just would like there to be a time of peace. That's one possibility. What else could be going on in the world around this person? Hi, Sharon. We're on page 120. Hi, we're looking at Sim Shalom this morning. We're studying peace, ironically. What else? Yeah, and
It seems like, like the whole thing of if somebody would be asked, hoping and praying for food in the fridge, they're doing that because they're hungry. So it's like this person is hoping and praying for peace because they're in a tumultuous time where there is no peace.
okay.
And there is some sort of war.
So let's drill down that a little bit more. When you say tumult, like what could be going, like what is, again, picture what could be going on in this person's world around them, different way. I like what you said about the longing for peace. Like there's a lot of length to what he's saying that has that feeling of like a real hunger for it. So what could be going on in this person's world such that they even need to long for peace that way? Yeah?
There's also strife externally, right? So if you're suffering from depression, you want peace as well. So there's two levels of peace. There's kind of like the external, right, world, but then there's also the internal world that could be out of peace as well.
Okay, so it might not have to be about any like, it could be an internal thing, and you could just easily be praying for. Remember we talked about how like the word shalom, peace, also can mean whole. So being whole is maybe a little more inner-directed. What else? What else could be going on for this person? Robin?
Maybe they're experiencing, I'm guessing, some like form of religious persecution, and the prayer is for peace is like more, it's like for toleration.
Yeah, it could be a person who's experiencing persecution, being singled out for who they are. What else? Alex?
I have a slightly different interpretation, but because it's interesting in the sense like, bless us, our Creator, one and all, with your light. For you have given us by that light the guide to a life of caring, full of generosity, having kindness and well-being, and thus, the way I interpret that is like, and thus peace, right? So it's like God has given us a guide through God's light, a path to peace that we can achieve within ourselves, right? And then after that, it's kind of like, please continue to guide us on that path to peace. Praise you, Adonai, and bless us as people, Israel, with peace. And the way I can interpret that is like, just like the path to peace, I guess.
Okay. So it's more of the journey rather than the destination.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like
Okay.
within ourselves is like how we achieve that peace.
Good morning, Hammermish Clam. We're on page 120, by the way. We're talking about a prayer for peace because we're living in a utopia right now where everything is super peaceful. That's why we're studying it, right? But I actually, I imagine like, I try to imagine myself like, what would it be like if I wrote this prayer and I was just living in a complete like war zone? We don't know that this is why the person wrote that, but it's one possibility, right, of many. So it's interesting to me to like imagine, like, let's say that like this person, and by the way, let's not use any particular current event about it. I'm just living somewhere where every day I am seeing violence in the streets, you know, for whatever reason. But it's like I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I can get a full night's sleep because I'm not sure what's going to happen in that night. I don't feel like I can go out of my home because I'm worried about what's going to happen on the way. Like, if that were the person who wrote this, and again, I have no idea who wrote it, like, how does one get from that set of circumstances to writing this? Or can they? Like, how, like, put yourself in that person's shoes. Like, how would they arrive at something like this? Lynn? Oh, so it's almost it's a statement of like of security and of like almost like a mantra to sort of give you confidence. Yeah, Shira.
I think thinking about how in a work time or time environments, like you kind of lose your moral compass, you lose their moral compass, their sense of like what they want. Like there's just so much rejecting of the things that are happening that you like this, you know, read that way feels like a statement of like there's another vision of another world like that, and sort of what this is what that would look like. That would look like a world where there's peace and there's happiness. It's like listing all those things, and that almost feels like a full organization of the chaos that's like the door.
I really like that. You know, thinking about this past week being Yom HaShoah, there was like an amazing scholar of the Holocaust who ran, for many years, he ran Yad Vashem in Israel. His name was Yehuda Bauer. He died like in the last year, maybe. And he was very adamant. He was a survivor and was a scholar of this. He was very adamant that no one who lived during the time of the Holocaust could actively see themselves as completely virtuous. He even felt this way about like people who were being victimized by it. Because he was a scholar, and what he found was plenty of examples of like people snitching on each other, or like people fighting with each other over resources. Like there are examples of like in the displaced persons camp after 1945, where people who, you know, a few years ago had been in a ghetto or been in a concentration camp there would like be riots that would break out between people who had grudges based on how they interacted with each other. And of course, that's before you factor in all of the, you know, all the villains at another level. So like there were acts of heroism, but like it's also important to understand that like in such a degrading, terrible environment, it just brings everyone down. It just brings everyone down with you, you know. And so while he was not saying it to like make, you know, survivors like himself out to be like a villain in the story, but just simply to say that like these terrible moments result in people doing terrible things out of desperation. And that's just, you know, so per Shira's comment, like, you know, can you see like living in all that and trying to find something else there? Anyone else can imagine to me, how would someone end up writing such a prayer like this? Amy?
I can see a little bit. I need to get up and go out the door in the morning, needing to put yourself in God's hands. I've made God responsible, or I've let God carry me through the scary parts of leaving the house and going out in that world and coming back. God is the bringer of peace, whatever peace God brings. I will be okay. It will be all right. I can do the day-to-day things.
because God gives me peace, whatever that peace ends up looking like. A little bit of sort of.
Oh, interesting. And so are you saying, you're almost saying like this person doesn't want their entire life to be shut down, even if there's risk, and so they're just.
There are other things I have to do if I don't feed my family. I know bad things will happen. If I go out, bad things might happen. I'm going to bring the peace that God has given me. The things I have to do.
This is yeah. I think that I buy that. Unfortunately, this is like showing my age or youth or something in between. But just I started high school right at the time where school shootings became a thing. Not that they didn't exist, before, but like the Columbine massacre, which was kind of like the first example of like just an entire school being shut down because of like just a massive killing, was in ninth grade for me. That was like how I started high school. And at the time, it felt like this really, it was a huge earthquake of a thing, and you desensitize ourselves a little bit to when it happens. There's even one just in the past week and a half at Florida State University, but it was a strange feeling going to a fairly ordinary public school after something like this happened. And like there was I don't ask everyone. You don't have to tell your age when you come in. I don't know if anyone else was also living through that at that exact time. But like for those who were, I distinctly remember like you were like definitely like wondering things, and the men who did the shooting. There were all these stories about the music they listened to and like how they dressed, and they had something that's called the trench coat. The trench coat mafia was like the name of what it was. And then in a big high school where you have lots of people who act differently, dress differently from another, all of a sudden you're like walking around being like, how do I, and then there were a lot of hoaxes. Like in the months after it, there were like days that like we arrived at school, like everyone was just standing outside because there had been a bomb threat or a shooting threat because no one had dealt with it before. At some point, I feel like for myself, I remember kind of thinking about this being like, my parents and I were sort of like, I can't like not go to school every day. I just gotta trust that it's gonna be okay. Even though I have no real way of knowing, there's like no rhyme or like these shootings now became so common. There's no way to predict where they happen. Like when they happen, we're unfortunately not that surprised because they've happened so often, but like no one has any ability to know why this year it was Columbine and then next year it was Parkdale or whatever other places it was. And sometimes you're not going to know those. You're not going to know those things. Shira?
Well, what you just said is kind of easy notice that after sort of asking for universal peace and happiness and blessing, this goes on to say, like, you've given us the way to that. You've given us the guide that we need, which is the Torah, right? The Torah is a guide to the Torah finding and love of justice and all that stuff. And so it's sort of like reasserting the moral standard, like in a time of degrading morality, right? Like after shooting, it's kind of like if we let it become normal and to say like it's not normal, but we really should be doing is following this set of guidelines for acting with kindness, compassion, and other
Yeah, I mean, even in living in a moment of real non-peace, let's just call it. There's still like a moral standard that you can shoot for. Maybe the ceiling has been lowered by circumstance, but don't just, but you still have to shoot for something. You still have to shoot for something. I think that this is a really tough prayer to say right now. Not because I don't believe it, but just there always are moments, especially for someone who prays fairly regularly, where I look at something and I say to myself, I've been saying this so many times, and all I see outside of my mind is the exact opposite of that. And that's hard. I mean, it's also hard. It's also hard even if we interpret it as more of an internal, like, non-peace. Like maybe it's not literal violence outside. It's just something. It's just a real internal mental struggle. But like, it can be hard every day just to sort of say something that feels at odds with what's there, or even just after a while, it feels like, why am I still saying this? It doesn't feel like I'm getting any closer to it. That's how I feel about praying for the hostages, to be quite honest with you. Like, we're not going to stop saying the prayer for the release of the hostages until all the hostages are released. And I probably am not alone in not having any idea when that's going to happen. But then every week, and I sometimes say it, in the morning too. Sometimes you have to forgive yourself for wondering, like, how many weeks am I going to say this? I feel like it's not there, but then stopping doesn't sound like a great option either. Like, stopping doesn't sound like a great option either. Yeah, Lou.
It's just exactly. And then, as humans, right, we have our timetable, and God has his timetable, and sometimes it's,
Look, as a rabbi, I love being able to say that sometimes things are just about, a test of faith. It can be a satisfying and a very unsatisfying answer, at times, because you're asking yourself, like, faith in what? Like, what am I having faith in? Is the faith in God? Because do I really believe that, like, God is, like, directly going to intervene in this? And if not, why hasn't God done that yet? If that's like part of your personal belief system, like, then you can say, I have faith in God, but like, if I think God's the one who's going to do it, why hasn't God done it yet? And then if it's faith in people, well, then we can go down a whole other road here of being like, I don't know if I have faith in the people who are the ones who can make the decisions. And again, you can put your own lens on that comment for how you feel about what's going on in the world, but like, it could be that case in any moment. It's not, I was not born when there were the hostages in the Iranian embassy, but using that as like an example, right? That was like a long example of hostages in the United States, where the people in charge of the country were fairly, what we would probably call politically liberal, right? We have a hostage situation now in Israel where the people in charge are not that. So it can cut both ways, like when you don't have faith in people, and I'm not big on telling people that there's one way to believe it. I don't think that's really possible, but I do think it's something I do think it's something people should have to grapple with, especially because some of these prayers about peace in the Siddur are some of the most well-known prayers in synagogue, even for people who don't feel that comfortable with like a Siddur. Like many people who don't feel like that literate in the Siddur still know from their childhood, like Sim Shalom or Oseh Shalom or Shalom Rav. It's pretty, it's a thing that often people remember, and the word Shalom is a fairly well-known Jewish word, even if you don't know Hebrew that well. So it's hard to escape it. And we're not going to leave today with any kind of solution to that problem. I feel like that would be really naive, since I don't expect that the next time I check the news tomorrow, it's going to be like good news. Everything is all better. And I'll end our little section before we start reading from our Torah portion with Team Hammermesh, because I believe it is all the Hammermesh family today. It's good to see you, Mia, by the way. There was a story that Leo Beck, who was like a European rabbi who also was a Holocaust survivor, told. I believe it was Leo Beck, I'm going to get. But the story goes something like this. That basically this person was living in a concentration camp with all of the horrors that had to have been involved. And it was around Hanukkah time, and he saw that his grandfather had like a small supply of butter, and he used some of the oil from the butter to light Hanukkah candles. And he was kind of shocked and said, like, he was taken aback by this, and said to his relative, like, this is like food. How can you like destroy this food so like we light the Hanukkah candles? And his father replied, that we've unfortunately learned that we can go 3 days without food and 2 days without water, but we can't go 2 seconds without having hope. I'll confess that I love that story and I don't like that story at the same time, because like hope is a strange thing in that way. But I think that, especially given like what it's like experiencing the world as it is right now. Last week was Yom HaShoah. This upcoming week, are Israel-related holidays. Like it's impossible not to think about it. And it's just my suggestion that if you happen upon looking in the Siddur today or any other day, and you look at this prayer, I think that it is helpful to say to yourself, like, tell yourself a story of someone writing this and imagining the world being the exact opposite of that, but they still decided to write it, and I can see that. Like I can imagine that having happened. Doesn't make anything about the world I'm in right now any easier, but it does remind me that like there are people who do that. And with that, we're gonna get started on reading the Torah portion. Fun fact: this is my bar mitzvah Torah portion, though not the triennial part that we're reading from. It's Parashat Shmini, which really has 2 big events. One is the death of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Abihu, which is in the first part of it, and then the other part is the laws of keeping kosher, which my friends in Pathways to Judaism, we talked a little bit about this morning. It's not an easy thing to understand. So I believe you're reading 1 and 2, and Mia's reading 3. Okay. So Obviously, we do Torah service a little bit differently. Is anyone interested in having an aliyah to the Torah this morning? All right, you can go one, yeah. Deborah, great. Two, yes, preferably. Like, I mean, like, should you have a head covering?
Well, yeah, I just
Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't know if I understood your question.
There's a, you know.
I just forgot, I forgot mine,
Okay, if you want to grab one outside, you can. But I'd say it's strongly preferred. And anyone number three, third aliyah, who's one?
but
Okay.
I'm always happy to stand up there with my family.
Okay, so that's fine. So Amy will be number three. It's hard for me. I know Susan's not here. Susan's not here today. We had Pathways class, Open Door Shabbat. There's Tot Shabbat. There's Junior Congregation. It's nice. It reminds me of how wonderfully lively our synagogue is becoming, and it also reminds me that we don't have enough people to do any of the things that we need to keep doing it. So. Okay. All right. Probably is a column. So who had their first aliyah? Okay. V'yazor v'yagim v'yoshal l'chol achosim bo v'nomar amen. Hakol havudel hinu kavod laTorah. Ya'amod.
Baruch ben Yitzchak.
Baruch ben Yitzchak la'aliyah harishona. Baruch shenatan Torah li'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. V'yatem haviki b'nai Elohechem ha'im kulchem hayom. Oh no. Oh boy. Right, because last time. I'm so sorry, people. I feel very logistically off my game, but currently the Torah is at the Song of the Red Sea because last Shabbat was the seventh day of Pesach. So I know this is a very forgiving congregation about those things, but I feel the need to apologize. Yes, it is. You can very obviously tell that we are not where we needed to be. So, should be right here. Yep. Okay. The first aliyah is found on page 636, chapter 11, verse 1.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvarah.
Baruch Adonai Barak Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarah Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai al Moshe ve'el Aaron lemor aleihem dabru el bnei Yisrael lemor zod hachaya asher tochelu mikol habehema asher al haaretz kol mafreset parsa v'shosat shesa parsa me'elat gera babehema tochelu ach et zeh lo tochelu mima'alei hagera וממעלה הגרה וממפריסי הפרסה את הגמל כמעלה גרה הוא ופרסה איננו מפריס טמאו לכם ואת השפן כמעלה גרה הוא ופרסה לא יפריס טמאו לכם Viet ha'arneh ve'kimalat gerahi ufarsa lo hifrisa tmeahi lachem. Viet ha'chazir kimafris parsahu. V'shosa shesa parsa v'hu gera lo yigar tamehu lachem. Mibasaram lo tochelu u'vinivlatam lo tiga'u tmeim heim lachem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Second Aliyah, Ta'amod, Devorah bat Avraham Vechana Eka Aliyah Hashniah. The second Aliyah is found on page 638, verse 9. You're transitioning to water things that you cannot eat.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch
Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai notin haTorah.
Amen.
Etzeh tochlu mikol asher b'mayim. Etzeh tochlu mikol asher b'mayim kol asher lo snapir v'kaskes et b'mayim b'yamim u'v'nechalim otam tochelu v'chol asher elo snapir v'kaskes et b'yamim u'v'nechalim mikol sheret hamayim u'mikol nefesh hachaya asher ומכל נפש החיה אשר במים שקט הם לכם ושקט יהיו לכם מבשרם לא תאכלו ואת נבלתם שקטו כל אשר אין לו סנפיר וקשקשת במים שקטו לכם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notin haTorah.
Amen. And now the third Aliyah. It's just like a bat mitzvah. Parents, okay.
No, I read all the Aliyot at my bar mitzvah.
Me too. Okay. Ta'amod.
Chana
Bat.
Moshe v'Sara.
Moshe v'Sara Aliyah Hashlishit. The third Aliyah that we're reading today is on page 639, verse 13.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. ואת אלה תשקטו מן העוף לא יכלו שקטם את הנשר את הפרס ואת האוזנייה ואת הרעה ואת היעל למינה ואת כל עורב למינו ואת בת היענה ואת התחמס ואת השחף ואת הנץ למינהו ואת הכוס ואת השלח ואת הינשוף ואת התנשמת ואת הקעד ואת הרחם ואת החסידה הענפה למינה ואת הדוכיפת ואת הטלף.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. You both can come down. All right, so we're going in a very different direction when we talk about this week's Torah portion than talking about peace. There, when you're talking about laws of keeping kosher, okay, there's sort of like, I would say there's like two categories of things that are kosher, or of laws to be kosher. I don't mean kosher and not kosher. I mean, there are things that there's nothing you can do to make them kosher,